So, good evening, everyone. Today we are on the third day of our management program conducted by WRC of ICI. Welcome you all. We have right now 20 attendees. So, let's wait for another 2 minutes. Maybe we join by some more participants and then we can start. So, ma'am, let's wait for a couple of minutes and then we'll start.
मैम स्टार्ट करिए। हाँ सर, माधव सर कलनी से स्टार्ट कर।
या हाँ, आप कर दीजिए।
स्टार्ट करिए।
2 minute में we'll start. So I'll introduce ma'am and then we'll start. So give me 2 minutes. I think.
तो लाइव चालू हो गया है सर?
हाँ, okay. Yeah. Okay.
So you are part of WRC, Madhavji?
No, ma'am. I am working with PwC.
You are an elected member.
No. I am not an elected member. I am a representative, and I just keep on participating in the events. That's
okay. So you are committee member then, co-opted committee member.
Indirect tax committee member. One of the committee members.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start. I think in the interest of time, and I think we'll be able to hear you more. So let's start. So good evening again. Good evening to all. I welcome Sangeeta Pandit ma'am, to the session for Management Development Program, which ICI is conducting. And today is the third and the final day of this session in the series. So on behalf of ICI WRC, I welcome Sangeeta ma'am. So Sangeeta ma'am is our member of our institute. She got qualified in 1984, almost around 30 years of experience, almost. So it's pretty experienced professional we have amongst us for presenting her thoughts on how do we achieve that success in our programs and in our practice and in our jobs. So she is also a BCom and a PhD. So she has done PhD very recently in 2016. She has also contributed to publications, and she has been paper presenter for a number of publications. So she has written on demonetization in India. She's also written on valuation and merger process in Journal of Teaching and Education, analysis of financial statement of hospitals, and risk management and banks. So the quite comprehensive and unique papers and publications I can see. Also, she has been a constant participant or the teacher or mentor for management development programs and faculty development programs conducted by various institutes, which can, to name a few of them, investment planning, SIMSRI campus, and then Tata Power employees. She has conducted similar kind of sessions. Also for Maharashtra State Electricity Board, Gujarat Heavy Chemicals, then DSRO, also for L&T Learning Center at Lonavala. Then, so these are some of her already conducted sessions on some similar theme. She also has a quite extensive industry experience. She is a practicing chartered accountant and associated with PD Kunte and Company from 1984 to 1989. She has authored 2 books published by Bombay Chartered Accountant Society, which is Taxation and Accounting for Medical Professionals and Taxation of Shares and Security Transactions. Again, I can see medical bit more on her introduction, so this is quite interesting, especially in COVID times. So we always speak on medical things these days. So also she's writing articles and poems in newspapers and magazines. So that the list is not ending. And she is, last not to mention, she has won 2 awards. Professor Indra Parekh Women in Education Award by World Education Congress 2018 and Devang Mehta National Education Award 2018. So the accomplishments and the experience is humongous, and it's really good to hear you, ma'am, and we are really fortunate to listen to you over this forum. So we welcome you for your session, and thank you for being a part of this series. So over to you, ma'am. Your voice is not coming, sorry. Uh, there is some issue.
Now is it coming?
Yeah, it is audible now. Yeah.
Okay, now I'll take away that thing. Okay. Now I want to remove myself from here.
So the
Okay, how do
screen
I-
is visible. The screen is visible. The PPT is visible. Maybe you can start.
But I want to see the PPT. No, I can see only myself here now.
Acha, okay. Okay.
So okay, hide my webcam. So can you hide your webcam also, Madhavji? So then I can see the PPT.
Okay. Is it visible to you now?
No, it's a black thing coming over my PPT. Hide all webcams, I'll do.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think. Perfect.
The organizer has stopped sharing. It's no longer visible to
मैडम
any
मैंने बंद किया।
हाँ।
संगीता मैडम मैंने बंद किया, आप चालू करिए।
अच्छा, मैं चालू करूं?
हाँ, आप चालू करिए।
हाँ, अभी दिखाई दे रही हूँ मैं?
हाँ।
Can I? Okay, so I'll start. Okay, thank you, Madhavji, for the kind introduction, and thank you, Western India Regional Council, for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts on this topic, strategies for career growth. ये आगे नहीं जा रहा है. Okay.
Yeah.
What are strategies? They are techniques or tools to navigate our career. So, and what is career? It is some occupation, some preoccupation which we are in, and where we expect a compensation, which may be financial or pecuniary or emotional. And what is growth? Like corporate restructuring, we all know what is corporate restructuring, that it is done for various purposes. Similar, it is done for expansion, for contraction, for diversification, and so many reasons. Similarly, something which we do in our career path, we may be doing for various reasons, but today what we are discussing is the intervention for growth in our career. So basically today we are trying to discuss strategies, that is techniques or tools to navigate our career from which we get some compensation, and focusing on growth of the career. Okay, now let's come first to strategy. What is strategy? Theoretically, there are 10 schools of thoughts for strategy. So let's go step by step. The first school of thought, which is a very popular school of thought, is the design school of thought, which I think yesterday those who attended had heard about this also, that design school focuses on doing SWOT analysis. You need to know your strengths, your opportunities, which are internal, which you have to, it is something which you own. And then externally, it is the opportunities and threats. So in SWOT analysis, you list all your strengths and weaknesses, and you list your opportunities and threats, and try to do matching of your strengths with the opportunities. There's no point in having skill sets for which there is no opportunity, and no point in tapping an opportunity for which you have a skill set. So this design strategy says that you have to focus on your strengths and align them with the opportunities, And today's way of functioning is that you forget your weaknesses, you outsource them, and be mindful of the threats which are there. Planning strategy is a very old school of thought, but very, very prevalent even today, that you have an entire plan before you, put it up on your say notice board or in front of you. You have short-term goals, long-term goals, timeline for meeting them and all. Positioning strategy borrows from Michael Porter's 5 forces, which is very aggressively used in business, where you need to know your position in the market. You need to know what is the bargaining power of your vendors, of your customers, which are the threat, or which are the substitutes which may enter your sector, what is the threat from the competitors, aligning them to our topic. One in career, in strategies for career growth, the strategy of positioning would be, you should know where you stand today, how much are you dependent on your juniors, your partners, how much is the client expectation from you, what are the changes in law or new laws which may make your skill set redundant, or what is a new technology which may come which may make you redundant. So you have to have a positioning strategy knowing these 5 forces. Entrepreneurial strategy is doing the same thing but in a different way. Like, for instance, analysts originally, when they used to do fundamental analysis of say HUL, if they have to do, they used to give the global view of the FMCG sector, then the domestic view, then particularly the write-up on HUL ratio analysis and everything, and then finally say what is the fundamental value, compare it to the market value, and then give their decision, buy, hold or sell. But today what they do, they go bottom up. They start from the decision, buy, hold or sell, then do the analysis of HUL, then go to the domestic market and the global market. So somebody started this and now it has caught on. Similarly, you have in contracts and partnership deeds, generally those old English words were used, thou shalt, here, there, under and all that. Then somebody started using simple English language and it is acceptable. So you have to be entrepreneurial, do the same thing in a different way. Cognitive strategy is carrying the team with you, being a good leader, and it uses psychology a lot. There are many organizations now who have realized that the productivity of employees depends on their state of mind. So not only they are focusing on the hard skills of the employees, but also on the soft skills. So these are some 5 schools of strategy, and they are theoretical models. You may not apply them fully, but it is good to know these models, and maybe a combination of them you apply. Then you have the learning strategy, meaning they say that he is wiser who learns from, he's wise who learns from his own mistakes, and wiser who learns from other mistakes. In this strategy, people document whatever steps they have taken which have backfired, and whatever steps they have taken which have been good, which they have worked for them. So you you understand what has worked for you, what has not worked for you, and also how the others have succeeded and failed. And so you be mindful to take steps and so you don't repeat history again by taking the same steps and causing the failure. This is the learning strategy. Power strategy is, yes, used by many. Like I teach in a B school, and I've seen that every batch there are a few students, nobody gives them the power, but they become a cartel. And I see people asking their permission to use the table tennis table, the canteen boy coming and asking them what should be the menu of the day. They are interacting with the faculty and saying, no, both these case studies you have given are somewhat similar, give a different case study. They just become powerful. So this is one strategy, that in your organization, slowly you become a power center along with a few friends of yours. Cultural strategy. Now, this cultural thing is a very ambiguous term, but it exists. Every organization has their own way of thinking, their own attitudes, and over a period, everybody in the organization starts thinking in the same way. Very subtly, this culture is built up. But very often, of course, this culture flows from the top. like in my time, we didn't have these mobile phones. When I started my practice, you had that EBEX and telephone operator and all. And I had observed that wherever the boss was courteous, even the telephone operator is to speak in a very courteous way. Today, a lot of importance is given to culture of an organization. In fact, you have cultural audit where they identify issues which are conducive to development of the organization, and some drivers which are bringing down the impact on the having a negative impact on the bottom line. Similarly, one has to do cultural audit of oneself. What are the issues which we are not which are bringing down our performance? Like environmental strategy is not about ecology as such, is like being in sync with the external world. Like if you see the information technology sector is forever in sync in what the client wants. They are constantly changing. Silicon Valley or our people at Bangalore and other hotspots, they are constantly changing their softwares, their hardware needs as per the needs of the business. Configuration strategy is like zero-based budgeting. You start from the every time you look at a thing, process or system, and you reconfigure it. Or like you can say battery operated cars, after a few days you need to recharge the batteries. Similarly, you need to recharge yourself. Maybe after every 6 months or every 3 months, you re-look at your skill sets, you re-look at the way you're functioning, your processes, your systems, your time management, and maybe things have changed internally, maybe things have changed externally, and you need to recharge, to reconfigure things. So these are 10 schools of thoughts of strategy. And there's one small book, Strategy Safari, written by Mintzberg. There are other two authors also, though they are called Mintzberg Schools of Strategy, Ahlstrand and Lampel. You can Google about it. I think it's freely available, this PDF book. It will definitely help you to approach your, how to navigate your career if you go through this book. You may not apply these strategies in toto, but a combination of those definitely would be helpful. Our topic is strategies for career growth. Now, what is career? Career comes from the Latin word carus, which means chariot. And what is chariot? It's a vehicle, something which needs to be driven well, something which needs to be maintained, something which requires fuel, something which requires to be insured. Similarly, it's your career. You need to run it well. You need to fuel it. You need to insure it. And you need to maintain it. In Sanskrit, it's called Vyavasaya, and there is a very popular phrase in Sanskrit, Korotu nama nitigno Vyavasaya mitisa sataha. Meaning, whatever is your career, you have to approach it with niti, with ethics. Only then it is a long run career. And also there is a school of thought that career involves exertion, effort, and it requires energy, passion. Any money you earn without exertion, without energy, without passion, then those fruits are not, that remuneration is not good money. It is not fruits of good labor. Then it is some kind of hobby or pleasure activity or something. Career does require a lot of effort, lot of passion, lot of energy. And what is growth? Growth is that there is increase, there is development. Like you have M&A activities, two organizations coming together, but that 2 + 2 should be more than 4, they say. So growth is somewhere, you are somewhere at one place in your career, you have to be in a higher place. Now, career growth, you can compare it to the investor life cycle. Like when you are young and you start investing in shares or mutual funds or whatever, you can afford to take risks. So the growth is very steep and fast. Then after a certain age, maybe when you are in your 50s and all, you have too many liabilities, you don't want to take risks, you shift to safer investments, and so the growth is there, but it is slightly flatter. Then you can't, you stopped you're earning that much. Things have changed, you've grown old by age, and so you say you're not going to take your wealth up with you, you start gifting it, spending it, and there is a decline. Similarly, in your career, when you're young, you can take risks, take different kinds of jobs, And so your exposure, your experiences keep increasing at a very steep and fast rate. And then you understand what is your aptitude, what is your niche area you should choose, and you focus on it. And then there is a growth, but a steady growth. And finally, when you have reached the top and worked there for some years, then it's time to give the younger people a space and be a mentor and start training others and sharing your knowledge. So when they asked me to prepare the give this session strategies for career growth, I did some surfing and collected data from the net, and we call that secondary data. And a lot of material I read about strategies for career growth, but I picked up about 3 or 4 of them which I found worth sharing. Means I would like to share them. One is an article written in Harvard Business Review by Efron, a simple way to map out your career ambitions. He has said that uh, he has said that there is, research has shown that there is something called a 70-20-10 model. That 70% of our career growth is due to experiences. See what happens that we keep reskilling our skills selves because of opportunities in the market, but as the others are also reskilling themselves, and we cannot keep pace with what is happening. So we have to focus on experiences. We have to go deep into issues and gather as much experience as possible. So 70% of our career growth is due to experiences, and the best things in life cannot be taught. You have to experience them, you have to learn them on your own. 20% is due to interactions with people, and only 10% is from your formal education. Your qualification may give you an opportunity, will give you work, but for that work to grow, for the career to grow, you need experiences. Then there is a very good book, The McKinsey Mind. If you get time, you should read it. You can download it. I think there is a PDF copy too. It's a McGraw-Hill publication. And there is a summary of this book also. They say that if you align their method to your career, first you should understand what is the need. What is lacking? What are the gaps in your career? Then you analyze it properly, do research on it, and then present it. Present the gaps maybe in a PPT or in a Word file of about 1500 words, putting your gaps which you have, and analyzing those gaps and all. And then you build a strategy how to manage them. And finally, you implement it. And you implement again, they say the same thing. The thread is there with leadership. Nobody is going to help you. Nobody is going to handhold you. You have to be proactive. Then there is a very interesting article in Forbes magazine by Vanguard, which speaks about self-career development. They say that the easiest way is to have 3 steps. First is put strategy first. Understand which strategy are you going to use: the positioning strategy, the planning strategy, the design strategy, the cognitive strategy, the power strategy, leadership strategy, environment strategy, or entrepreneurial strategy, or a combination of those strategies. Understand which strategy are you going to use, and then be your own chief marketing officer. Be mindful, of course, of our code of ethics. We are not selling soaps or shampoos, so we cannot advertise in a very brash way, but in our own way, that we have to see that we have visibility, there is visibility of our skill sets. And the third most important thing is ask for feedback. It's a cycle, they say. You perform and you ask for feedback. Ask for feedback from your client, ask for feedback from your juniors, from your colleagues, from your friends, from your relatives, from your family, from everybody. Keep asking feedback. And when you get the feedback, you filter off the what you feel is mockery or sarcasm, and go to the crust and come and understand what is good for you, what would be, what you would change, and you would be better in delivering your services. So this feedback loop is very good. They say that's a loop. You relook at your strategy, design your strategy, be your own chief marketing officer, do your task, ask for feedback, again change, again perhaps tweak your strategy a bit, and this is a continuous process, and it will definitely help you in your career. growth. Then John Hopkins University, they have said that they have put up a very interesting career management model. They said once we want to switch careers or we are looking for a job, the first instinctive reaction is to update our CV. But they say no, that is not the way. The first step that you do is to make an assessment of yourself. Assess your skill sets, assess what you can deliver, and then do research about what are the opportunities and for what are the openings, and then take a call trying to align your skill sets with the opportunities. If they are not, then you try to align them, find opportunities as per your skill sets if you've not yet found them, or hone your skill sets to align with the opportunities. And finally, then you make decisions and set your goals. You go for interviews, then write your CV, and then you have to also readjust to the changing times and keep having new transitions into new areas to keep yourself updated, keep yourself being relevant. So this is all secondary data which I have collected. I collected a lot, but I'm sharing these four. I'm sure you will benefit by going through these articles of Efron, the Understanding the McKinsey's Mind, and this book. And this and these are very small articles also, self-career development articles. And go to Hopkins University website, you will see their career management model. This is the secondary data that I have collected. Then I spoke to about 25 CAs. 25 CAs who were a combination of CEOs, principal partners in firms of repute, very successful individuals practicing CAs and who have made a name for themselves in niche areas and now taken partners. So it was a very diverse group. And I discussed with them when did they pass their final CA, how did they start their career, where were they at the start of their career, in their mid-career, at the end of their career, what were the skill sets they feel that had helped them to reach where they are, and which people supported them, who were their mentors, did they have any role model, what is their way ahead, and all. And I put all their responses in an Excel sheet. And though they were such a diverse group, I could detect a pattern and a thread of commonality in their responses. So, start of career, the response was, all 25 of them said focus was not monetary return, but quality of experience. Out of 25, only 2 got decent salaries when they started. And others, you will not believe, but they started with 700, 600, 900, 1200 rupees per month. It was not even enough to cover their conveyance, their food. But they were determined that they are going to spend a few years of their life in absorbing, in understanding, in developing their skill sets. See, because like doctors, when they pass their MBBS, it's not that they are qualified to treat patients, they just have a degree. They need to work with patients to hone their skills. Similarly, once you pass your final CA, you are qualified to do the audit, taxation, or whatever it is, but you still have not acquired those skill sets. So to acquire those skill sets, you need to work, you need exposure, you need experience, and people are not going to give that to you immediately when you pass your final CA. So when the focus then should be not monetary return, sadly, because maybe people of your age would be earning far more, and it is upsetting that I'm of the same age, equally qualified, but I'm not getting that salary. But that is I mean, you have to have a long-term vision. You have to sacrifice first 3-4 years and focus only on your quality of exposure, experience, and not on monetary return. And that was all 25 of them said that. Then out of 25, I would say 22 were saying that choosing the first job was more of exploring oneself, and 2 or 3 by default they had to join their family organization, or the first job that came, they took it, or something that way. But most of them, it was the first job was more of exploring oneself and understanding. And when they took the first job, they did everything. It's not that they shied from doing anything. So suppose it was a small time practice that they had joined, it was right from filling challans, going for adjournments. They never said, no, I'm not an article clerk, I'm a CA, I can't do this. They did all kinds of jobs and got all kinds of experience. And the one thing was there that they all worked very hard. And when they reached mid-career, means about after say 3 to 5 years, their performance showed. They worked so hard and so diligently that whatever they did, they mastered it. And they had exposure to everything. And because of that performance which counted, which showed, they were picked up and specific exposure was given to them. 4 of them in my sample of 25 got international exposure. They were sent with seniors all over the world. Some of them were introduced to other departments and shown the systems, processes that run a big organization. Some were trained to how we build teams, how to be proactive, how to lead teams, how to lead projects. Some understood the importance of collaborations, of integrating the various skill sets they had learned, different skill sets they had learned, and how to integrate it for a particular activity. So the hard work in their start of career, their willingness to do all kinds of jobs in their start of career, and total exposure in their start of career help them in their mid career. They were recognized and given great opportunities, and these two issues helped them to reach the peak of their career. When I asked them if they had any mentors, they said actually they didn't have any mentors, nobody to handhold them. In fact, sometimes they had bad bosses. They had people who took credit for the work they were doing, but they were still inspired, motivated, because they felt that in the long run, nepotism means, the boss having favorites because someone is related to him or her, or because someone speaks or behaves better with him or her, giving gifts and all, or protectionism, protecting somebody. That doesn't work out in the long run. In the long run, they realize that it is performance, it is merit that counts. So none of them had any specific mentor, but at every stage, maybe every project, they had someone whom they could rely on, sort of. They also didn't have any but they all had someone which inspired them. Like one of them said they had an uncle who was in the corporate world, who had reached the top management, and he always felt that he should be like him. Like someone said that they used to always meet someone in a marriage function who used to be forever advising people on tax issues and planning and all that, and she used to be very impressed and felt like she should be like him that way. So they were inspired by some individual or the other. And then finally, when I made a list of their skill sets, and according to the priorities which they were giving for the skill sets, they felt which has helped them reach the peak of their career, because the people I interviewed, to repeat, have our CEOs or CFOs or extremely successful chartered accountants. Surprisingly, the first skill set they felt which helped them was adaptability. One of them said that, see, I entered the corporate world, and it was very, very difficult for me, because there were times when I was um, blamed for something which I was not responsible for. There were times when I had to do jobs which was not meant to be done by me. There were times when I did the job till the end, but the final glory went to somebody else. But still, instead of complaining, instead of playing the victim card, they all adapted to the situation and found a way to go the next step. They took everything with a pinch of salt, because they were focused on improving their skill sets and going ahead in life. Then there was modesty also. They never said, मैं तो CA हूँ, ये काम मेरा नहीं है, ये तो 12th standard का काम है. There was, and also modesty in addressing all their juniors, people around them. People remembered. Very often, they say that words you speak cannot be taken back. And sometimes it remains in the mind of some people, and they are not ready to cooperate when you take them in your team. So their modesty also helped. Analytical skills, all of them felt that they had good analytical skills, and it helped them. In another way, they were saying that it was basic common sense. Like sometimes a figure looks too, it doesn't look just right, though it may have come from the Excel sheet because the input was wrong or something. So you need basic common sense to have good analytical skills. And communication skills, they were very vocal about it. Communication skills is not speaking flowery language or whatever, like good English or something. We all know that Germans, Japanese, Chinese don't know English, still they're so very successful. Communication skills is basically the opposite person understanding with clarity precisely what you want to speak. And that goes to analytical skills, modesty also. If you are modest, you hear lots, you listen carefully, and you understand what is required of you. If you have analytical skills, you can present yourself, present your opinion in a very good way. So you need good communication skills and people skills also, meaning there are some organizations where attrition rate is very high and some where they are very low. Uh, uh, you have to know how to build teams, how to get along with people and all. Um, in fact, this 2019 World Economic Forum, there was a presentation and they said that it is now the soft skills, the people skills, which are becoming more and more important because a lot of stuff is getting automated. There was a research amongst Google employees also, and their STEM skills, their science, technology, mathematical skills and all are very important when you're working in a tech organization. But even in such organizations, they felt that it was your people skills, your ability to get along with people, your ability to carry the team with you. These are far more important than your other skill sets. And then 5 of those 25 people said that our entrepreneurship skill sets helped us. When you are an employee, you still can be an entrepreneur. Some people call them being intrapreneur. You have to keep doing things in a different way. That differentiation you have to bring about. Uh, like everybody may be filing returns in a particular way, gathering information in a particular way. But if you're innovative in gathering the data, it makes a difference to the client, and it brings a difference, creates an impact in your efficiency and quality of service. Differentiation stems from entrepreneurship, looking at things in a different way and giving the same service which everybody is giving, but your service stands out. And then for about 6 of the 25 people finally working in a niche area work and awareness of service, they said that very often when we render a service, we are not aware as to what that service requires us to render. Because a client may give you a query, but the client also has not drafted the query well. Because the client also may be, there may be a little ambiguity in the minds of the client also. So dialogue is very important. You have to talk to your clients and try to understand from where this problem has come, the cause of the problem, understand the background, and then you can redraft the query of the client and then get it verified with the client. This is what the client wants. Otherwise, we're unnecessarily giving a service which the client doesn't want. And the client sometimes does not spell out exactly what all does he want from the service. So then you also you keep with a dialogue, going back, asking, do you want this also, do you want that also, and finally you give a full holistic opinion. So very often that awareness has to be there when we are in the service sector as to what is the requirement. We are sometimes giving a service which the client doesn't find useful because the client himself could not uh, speak or give a proper uh, properly convey what he or she wanted. Now, when I ask them that now they are been very successful, what would be your message to those who are in the start of their career or in the mid-career stage? They said, first of all, there should be conceptual understanding. Don't try to, go understand what is the explanation to a particular provision of by heart, that, subsection 1, A, B, and all that. Because when you are in practice, you are going to have all the books with you. You try to understand conceptually the intent of the law. Why was that amendment made? Why is that section there? So conceptually understand a provision, a section. And then decision making ability. You cannot give an opinion and dono table pe haath. You take a stand as to, okay, you tell the client, okay, you can do this also, but according to you, this would be the way to do. So take a stand, be decision making. Don't make your opinion so complex that the client is clueless as what is the outcome and what he or she has to do. So let there be decision making in your service. And then they said you have to deep dive into issues. I mean, there is always a tug between quality and timelines, but somewhere you have to, take the help, collaborate, take the help of your juniors, seniors, others in your team, and look at a issue holistically. Like it is said that when you, this is very commonly referred to, that when a glass falls, its bits and pieces go everywhere. The impact is felt in all corners of the room. Similarly, when you take up an issue, that impact is there on the Income Tax Act, on FEMA, on stamp duty, on so many acts, and maybe on a human resource issue, marketing issue, if it's a corporate entity. So you have to look at it in a holistic view, your issue, and don't be obsessed with only looking at it in one angle. And of course, all those who were successful had high EQ. As I told you, they were very adaptable. They took criticism with a pinch of salt, trying to filter out what they felt was mockery, sarcasm, very thick-skinned. It did not bother them. What they were focused on, understanding what was wrong with them and changing that. And of course, in the long run, ethics do pay. Um, uh, I mean, very beautiful documents is Schedule 4 to the Companies Act, the Independent Directors Code, and also our Code of Ethics. You must go through it, though they are very long. The Code of Ethics is long. The Schedule 4 of the Code of Conduct for Independent Directors also you can go through, of the Companies Act 2013. See, these are all, if you see, common sense. And they are also taught in B schools. But when I started teaching in B schools, and I realized that whatever they're teaching, we know them right from childhood in our festivals and all. We have heard these stories from our grandparents and parents. There are simple ethics of no conflict of interest, transparency, honesty, and in the long run, it does pay. And all these 25 people have said sometime or the other in life they had not all, I would say 15 of the 25 said that sometime in life they were constrained to compromise on their ethics, and it came back to haunt them, and it brought a setback in their career. You have to be focused, and as I said, that comes from high EQ. You cannot allow things to disturb you. You have to know what you want to achieve. Hard work. When you see very, very successful people, you look at Jeff Bezos, or you look at Narayan Murthy, or you look at Steve Jobs, or whatever, or any successful person, you feel, oh my God, they're geniuses. They're so intelligent. But let me tell you, all the 25 I spoke to, I didn't find them exceptionally intelligent. It was 99% hard work and 1% genius. Again, people's skill, I can't stop harping on that. I think on day 1 and day 2 also it was mentioned. See, you cannot work alone. You have to work in a team. It brings efficiency, it brings speed, and it brings diversity in a service, because then you are looking at issues, the same issue from different viewpoints, and you get a more holistic view of the issue. So you have to work in teams today. Yeah, you have to get along with people, different kinds of people. And in fact, if you are a very homogeneous team who see eye to eye, and then everybody has the same thought process, everybody has the same attitudes, it doesn't work out. You need diverse people with different economic backgrounds, with different cultural backgrounds, uh, uh, with different skill sets. So when it merges, then you have taken a holistic view of an issue. So you need the skill sets to get along with all kinds of people, even if you find them, their habits a little repulsive, their way of talking little repulsive, because everybody may not be the way you speak or the way you dress, but that doesn't mean that the person is not a value addition to your career. So accept all kinds of people. Diversity will really bring a lot of energy in your career growth. And reading, whether you're reading on the internet, on the websites, or you're doing physical reading. Reading is very, very important. And research has proved that, you know, you look at means it improves your thought process. So have this reading habit. Try and read every day at least 20-25 pages of, say, an autobiography or a biography or some self-help books or something. And also read some fiction also, because they say, you know, you cannot be eating only dal, roti, chawal and a balanced diet. In between, you need some fried things, you need pizza, otherwise you'll go crazy just eating normal food every day. Similarly, you can't just be reading heavy stuff all the time. Read some light stuff, comics, some romantic novels or whatever, crime novels or whatever. But read also heavy stuff also. It helps. It's not only reading what is relevant to your practice or to your job. You have to do other reading, because that opens up your perceptions. All those 25 people are ardent readers. And of course, self-discipline. You for better delivery, to do good time management and all, you need to you need to be self-disciplined. You need to know how to manage your affairs. So I came to a conclusion after speaking to all these 25 people, and also going through all the secondary data which I had collected, 4 of which I have shared, that it is very important to leverage your strengths. Whatever is your strengths, you have to utilize it for your career growth. And you have to align these competencies, your strengths, with the opportunities in the market. And that is possible if you are prudent in decision making. And how can you be prudent in decision making? I have observed that we all live in two levels of consciousness: higher consciousness and normal consciousness. See, we are all human beings. We are going to succumb to anger, to greed, to jealousy, feeling upset if somebody says something, feeling burnt out. So all this is being in the normal consciousness. Higher consciousness is being stoic, not very happy because we are successful, and not very depressed when we fail, being very balanced, being very pragmatic, being aloof, being able to take a third party view of things. So that is being in a higher consciousness. And you can reach that higher consciousness in the way that works for you. For some people, it is meditation that works. For some people, it is yoga that works. For some people, it is listening to music that works. For some people, it may be hiking. For some people, it may be dancing. Whatever it is, you need to know your sweet spot in life. What works for you to go to a higher consciousness? What makes you at ease? What makes you let all that tension in your body go away, and make you think in a very pragmatic, in a very balanced way? So when you are in that state of mind, only you should take the important decisions in your life. And normally then they are the right decisions, the apt decisions. If you take decisions which when you are in the normal consciousness, then those decisions are a result of your emotions. They are prompted, they are prodded by your emotions. And when you take decisions, you have to be very, very aloof. You have to take, that is actually the essence of some of the holy books, that you have to take decisions in a very balanced, pragmatic way. Prudence in decision making. And then you have this very important quadrant of relationship issues and career growth. All 25 said that they had good support, a good ecosystem that helped them in their career growth. So, and then you cannot say that my family background is such, I don't get support. Because you have to have leadership qualities to create that environment where you have good relationship issues. You have to be the person who's navigating your own career. And to have a good career, you need to have strong relationships, whether it is with your family members, whether it is with your colleagues, whether it is with your bosses, whether it is with your clients. You can never play the victim card, because you are creating the environment. You have to create an ecosystem by which you have strong relations. And these strong relations help you to be in a higher consciousness, and to take the right decisions which will align your opportunities with your competencies and help you to leverage your strengths. So then I would say that there are some points to ponder. Is working in silo manner never works. You have to work in teams. You have to sometimes collaborate. You have to take help. Man is a social animal. You have to be with people. Then sharpening tools, it is not our kitchen knives, what is that, dharwala comes and you go and sharpen your knives. No, you have to sharpen your own tools. You cannot expect anybody to sharpen your tools. Attending webinars, reading books, speaking to your mentors, seniors, gives you some direction, gives you some help, but ultimately it is your job to deep delve into issues, dive into issues, get yourself exposed to experiences and sharpen your stool. Again, as I said, holistic approach. Don't look at things from one viewpoint, and that is why collaboration works. When people with different viewpoints come together, look at things from 360 degrees. Be a mentee and intern for life, they say. Like they say, Walt Disney passed away sometime at the age of uh, early 60s or late 70s or so. On his deathbed, till he was dying, he was learning in spite of being so successful. Every time he was coming up with something new. So keep learning in your lifetime. And networking is very important. But what is networking? It is not people putting a thumbs up or a like for something that you have posted. It is not putting things for the whole public to see and all. Networking in the true sense is having good bonding. How many people can you just call up, say at 11 o'clock in the night or 2 o'clock in the night, and say, talk to me, I'm feeling low? And suppose before this pandemic, or when things become normal, can you walk into anybody's house at 12 o'clock in the night and say, I can't get sleep, I'm feeling low, let's sit together and chat for some time? So that is networking, building strong relations with your friends and relatives where you can rely on them. And these are the people who are going to give you work because they like you, they depend on you. And of course, again, ethics, do read the code of ethics of ICAI, do read schedule 4 to the code of independent directors code. They're excellent documents which will give you an idea about the ethics you have to follow. There are often in life decisions you have to take which may go against what you feel is good ethics, but you have to compromise, but see that you take a moderate path. And government jobs now do pay well. So don't just say that working in PSUs or working in a government department is not my cup of tea. It's not the security of the job that I'm speaking, but even these jobs do have a good exposure, good quality you can get, and good salaries also you can get over there. Again, to repeat, focus on exposure. Uh, try to do all kinds of jobs. Originally, it was said that a rolling stone gathers no moss, but today millennials are changing jobs. It is accepted. They what do you say, absorb as much as they can in one job, apply it to another job which they're doing again, absorb as much as you can. So I mean, each one has to understand what works for them and work that way. So, of course, for us, we all know that our core areas is taxation, which may be direct, indirect, tax planning, consultancy, appellate work. You may go in for audit, internal statutory due diligence. Now, valuations is emerging fast, and it is growing and growing. Forensics has already emerged, but still there is huge potential for that. Now, accounting also, KPOs and BPOs, which are writing accounts for various bodies. You can be a person who's a promoter of a KPO or a BPO, and core finance jobs in organizations where you're in charge of budgeting, your capital structure, that will also take you up. Bankruptcy is also a very big emerging area where you can have, even now they are saying individual bankruptcy also may become a big issue. So these are, I mean, areas where people other than chartered accountants may find it difficult to enter, So we can focus on them and get exposure in all types of works, and then finally find out what for which we have an aptitude, and then build that as a niche area. Then you have related areas, like you have financial intermediaries. Many people, chartered accountants, are working in mutual funds, in banks, then in research, in CARE, CRISIL, CMI. Then many chartered accountants are also analysts in big broking firms and all. And there I spoke to some chartered accountants. They said that at the start, they don't get the salary as much as a MBA engineer, MBA who is basic qualification as an engineer gets. But over a period after 5-6 years, they realize that CA is better because his concepts of finance are stronger. Then this is one, I know 3 chartered accountants who have started this CFO sharing practice, meaning there are some SMEs who can't afford highly paid CFOs and CEOs. And so if they have to do a representation to a bank for a working capital loan, or they want to come up with an IPO, they don't have the wherewithal or the talent to do that. So only for that specific activity, they will appoint these people. In dispute resolution, arbitration, though it is more the work of lawyers, many chartered accountants are entering into this. Investment banking for IPOs and private equity and all these, you require a financial acumen, and which CAs do have. And many of these investment banking people are CFAs, but we can definitely take employment here in, say, Credit Suisse, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank and all, Citi and all. There are many chartered accountants working here, and when we go to their websites, there are career options over there. They're forever looking for smart people. Then, of course, there is diversification. You can be in business or the related business, or in an unrelated business, a related profession or an unrelated profession. But you have to, if you feel you need to diversify, you must diversify. See, look at Raghuram Rajan. He was the RBI governor, RX RBI governor, but an engineer by qualification. Or Ajit Ranade, who was a long-term economic advisor to the Tata Group. He's an engineer by qualification. So why can't chartered accountants also do something different? Somebody very near and dear to me once told me that, see, your qualification is acting as an obstacle to your career growth. And let me tell you, I diversified into teaching and training, and it really changed my life. So maybe you have to think, what is actually your attitude? What is actually your aptitude? You need not stick to something just because you're qualified to do it. Your qualification has helped you to understand things conceptually, to dive deeper, to work harder. And CA qualification is such a strong qualification that it opens many doors. You don't have to be restricted to traditional practice. Be open. Like I teach in B schools, and 90% of my students are engineers who specialize in finance and do very well in finance jobs. So why can't CAs do very well in other jobs? So be open to diversification in your career. Then you have a specialist versus generalist approach. When I did the survey of these 25 CAs, I realized, and of course it is common sense also, you will also be knowing, that those who have reached the top management, who are CEOs, they are generalists. They don't know the nitty-gritties of GST, or which forms to fill and when to fill, what are the deadlines, but they know, they have a macro view of all the issues. And then they are leaders to the teams which manage those particular issues. So if you want to be in a corporate world, in industry, you have to be a generalist to reach the top management. You have to lead teams which are specialists. Then specialist is someone which is more for those in practice, who builds a niche area and a reputation in that particular area. And whether you're in industry and practice, you cannot do away with technology. Technology is there to stay. It's going to increase the speed of our delivery of service, the quality, the efficiency, everything. Whether it is big data, whether it is machine learning, whether it is artificial intelligence, Machine learning is, analyzing the data. Artificial intelligence may be being very predictive, but chartered accountants have the concepts. When you have your conceptual understanding, you could be the people feeding this technology. So machine learning AI will run on data inputs where we can enter being the people who feed this data. So try and be forward looking, see what are the emerging areas in future, and be mindful that technology is going to play a very big role. 5G is around the corner and it is going to change the complexion of business. So you have to be tech savvy. Simple things like preparing PPT, being nimble at Excel, you have to be. And again, I tell you this, nobody can teach you. It has to be self-taught. What is these Excel workshops and all? Maybe give you a little bit of understanding that, yeah, these functions are there. But finally, hands-on, you have to practice and grasp them. Uh, and you have to understand, again, your aptitude, coming back to SWOT analysis. You have to understand your strengths, and you have to do in life what you enjoy. If you are working only for money, it doesn't work out. There is a kind of drudgery, that passion is not there, and then the quality of service also is impacted. So do something with which you have an aptitude. We all know the point of indifference or incidence, or the bit break-even point, where up to a certain point it doesn't matter whether in your capital structure there is debt or equity, and after that point it is better to take debt because earnings per share increases more than in proportion. If you apply that concept here too, there are so many issues you will face in your career, which is which you, if you take a stand this way or that way, it is not going to impact your health, it is not going to impact your wealth, it is not going to impact your career, it is not going to impact your immediate relationships. Then just let go. Let the opposite person feel that they have won over you. Let the opposite person feel that they have got a better deal than what you have got, because it doesn't matter to you. So that is having high EQ again. So understand what are the issues up to a certain point which is not going to impact you. Only after that point, if it's going to impact you positively, if you take a particular stand, then take that stand. If not, before that, whichever stand you take is not going to make a difference, and let the opposite party have its moment of glory, and maybe then they will come back to you for some reason, because they're happy with you. This ABC analysis we've all done theoretically. It is one of the most sensible and simple theories, that in a go down, if there are 100 items, only 5 items really are worth the value, worth the major portion of the value. Like, see, when I was young, it was a big, it was a way of life that we ate in these Udupi hotels, which served idli, dosa and all. And they were so crowded. And in fact, when we were eating, there was somebody standing behind us. And they were very, very efficiently run, and their cash registers were ringing. And within 2 or 3 years, they crossed the break-even point and started making big profits. They all used ABC analysis without reading, reading this theory of inventory management. If you see, the owner at the Galla used to keep the dahi vada, the cashew nuts, the Nescafe, and in the kitchen, the chutney, sambar, idli, dosa used to be there, and the waiters could drop them by mistake, eat them sometimes by hidingly, or serve little more to their friends. It didn't matter, because the owner knew that though that was 85% of his inventory, it was just 15% of the value. The little inventory which he was controlling was the major value portion. So that way also, very often we cannot, it is very difficult for us to do time management, very difficult for us to meet deadlines, too much work we are burdened with. It is because we don't do ABC analysis, that 80% of our work is not revenue generating. It is work which we should outsource to our juniors, to our other people. And then outsource meaning totally outsource. You don't have to have your emotions caught in it. Okay, those people may not do a good job. So what? They will learn when the client comes back to them saying that this is not done. So let go things which are, cluttering your work schedule and not allowing you to focus on that 5% which is important. Understand, just be mindful of your A category jobs and focus on them. and let go your B and C category, outsource them, share them with your other people and all. So try to implement the ABC analysis of inventory management in your career and you will see a significant change. It would be useful if you could prepare, if possible, a profit and loss account statement. Your revenues could be your experiences, the various, and the more experiences you have, the more should be your revenue. What are your wow moments in life? When was the time when you were really impressed? You were in awe of things. You really appreciated it. What is the quality time that you have spent, a happy time with your employees, with your clients, with your office people, home people, when there were smiles and laughter around you. So these could be your revenues, and your expenditures could be your, say, time spent, the money spent, and the difference you transfer to the your balance sheet. And your balance sheet, your asset side, could be your habits. In fact, Stephen Covey has written a very good book, Success Tips to Teenagers, where he has said habit is one thing which can make you or mar you. Good habits can really make you successful, and bad habits can bring you down. Like habits like reading the financial papers. You know, when some people have this habit that they can't sleep unless they have read the financial papers, whether it is the Mint or the ET or whatever. So there are so many helpful habits which you can develop, which will boost your career. Reading financial papers, or being abreast with the current news. I mean, not listening to news where those 8 people are there, you know, like this passport size photos are there, people are there, and everybody screaming about some issue. No, read some good articles, read some good blogs and all. So these reading and being abreast on the what is happening globally, and what is happening in India, what is happening with BR elections, what happened in IPL, you know, these are all helpful habits. Qualifications, I don't mean only your paper qualifications, your other qualifications also. How ethical you are, how controlled you are, how many times you can be in higher consciousness and not in the normal consciousness, how many times you can be balanced, be aloof, be pragmatic, or be stoic. What are your relations, what are your strong relationships, with whom you can really bond well, with whom you can speak your mind, with whom you can fight and still go back after 2 days as though nothing has happened. Then your assets could be your skill sets, your technical skill sets plus your non-technical skill sets, and of course your health. Can you climb 5 stories, or can you still climb 5 stories, 3 stories? Do you have normal BP and all? Positive emotions. I think on the first day Anita Modak was speaking about how we have at the back of our mind something like a reptile which sort of absorbs only the negative parts of an event faster, the negative parts of one what is speaking faster, and then it remains also. It's like a reptile which is hissing out venom all the time. You should be able to control that reptile and delete all the negative emotions and always have positive emotions. And purpose, lakshya. Unless you have a purpose, it's like a destination, then you're just going in circles. You don't know where you're going and why you're doing things. So these are your assets. And what are your liabilities? Could be your lack of skills, your wrong habits, maybe sleeping in, having a very wrong body clock. You sleep anytime, get up anytime, eat. Of course, you need to eat junk food, as I said, but all the time you're eating junk food, or otherwise you're not happy. So you have, or you only read uh, stuff relevant to your transaction. You don't go deeper and read the take a holistic view of things. Then lack of skill sets. You don't know how to talk, you don't know how to do dinner table conversation, you don't know how to negotiate, uh, you are forever pulling down people. You think the best way is to bulldoze through some deals. uh, you don't have speaking skills, you don't have people skills, and you don't have the hard skills also, because you never had the time to go deeper into issues, to have exposure to good experiences. You have a lot of negative emotions. You feel you're a victim, that people are not treating you well, that you've never got good opportunities, you came from an impoverished background, and all kinds of negative emotions are there. You have health issues also, because you don't have self discipline perhaps, or maybe of course your health issues are not your fault also, but it is a liability. And you have no goals in your life. The planning strategy you have not used. There are no short-term goals, no long-term goals, and other liabilities. The difference is your net worth. And this net worth you have to keep adding, just as a normal balance sheet. Every year's net profit will go there and the net worth keeps increasing. Every year you have to keep increasing your revenues with your wow moments, with your experiences, with your exposures, and increase your difference of your revenues over expenditures and increase your net worth. Try to increase your assets and decrease your liabilities. And when you have this balance sheet of life, your career growth is inevitable. We do ratio analysis of normal P&L and balance sheet. When we are filing our own individual return also, many of us prepare our own P&L and balance sheet also. Why don't we do ratio analysis of those two to understand how much we are spending to earn a particular amount? What is the coverage of our loans and liabilities? What are our efficiencies in managing some of our current assets? What is our liquidity position? Now you saw in this COVID-19 situation how important cash became, and what is the stability of our entire job or service that we are in, practice that we are in. We all know that very high leverage has made many organizations go under the NCLT hammer. So similarly, we too need to have the optimum structure in our strategy. For a good career growth, we need a good amount of global practice and a local practice. And now for that, it is each one's structure is different as per their situation. There is no one generic structure. How much of westernization to have and modernization to have. See, it is very important to know that westernization is not modernization. You can be very, very Eastern in your outlook, in your culture, and still be very, very modern. Have the latest gadgets, be very, very tech savvy, but be Eastern. So how much of westernization to have in your career and how much of modernization to have, which is Eastern, in your culture, you have to, in your practice, you have to see. I don't know, most of you may be from Bombay or from out of Bombay, but in Bombay we have shops in Paiduni, Bhuleshwar, which, Aage Dukan, Piche Makan. These are small people or business people, but they're extremely wealthy. They spend crores in their marriages. Some of them are my friends. They take chartered flight to Nathdwara for once a year for the darshan. So why don't we have them as clients? And obviously there is a lot of cash economy. We have to be nation builders and convince them that our tax rate is not very high. In fact, they may be spending more to hide those, not pay taxes, pay bribes or do things to hide that. Demonetization has brought out how many people had a lot of cash, and many chartered accountants were called upon to solve those issues. We have to now, try to bring people into the regulated sector and convince them, like some of my, when I was young, maybe in just in college or school, I used to go to my friends' places and ask their dads, uncle, आप tax क्यों नहीं भरते? आप तो इतने अमीर है. तो then he just saying, बेटा हम 100 रुपया कमाने के लिए 50 200 रुपया 150 रुपया 50 रुपया कमाने के लिए 100 रुपया खर्चा करते हैं. वो 50 रुपया में 30 रुपया सरकार को देने, तो हमें क्या बचता है? और वो हम सरकार को भी बताएंगे तो उनको विश्वास नहीं है, वो और कुछ ऐड करते जाते हैं, तो उस झंझट में ही जाना नहीं है हमें. तो you have to convince these people and show that how you can, there is now a lot of things are driven by technology, corruption is reducing, and it is safe to deal with the government agencies, and you can pay taxes, and how our tax rate is pretty low, and how unless you pay taxes, an individual cannot build bridges and have railway tracks and all. You have to convince them and get them into the regulated sector and be a part of nation building. And that's going to help you. That's going to bring you more and more clients. But because believe me, those who are in cash economy want to come to the regulated sector, but are intimidated by it. So if you have strategies, if you have way of talking, good communication skills, which is going to give them confidence, then definitely your client base will increase humongously, exponentially. So this is a game, as Madhavji said, I teach in B schools now, and this is what is there regularly done in B schools. First, have a dialogue game that people talk to each other a lot, because you have to talk to understand people, to understand issues. You can't be just sitting in your cabin and working all the time. Uh, then we ask them to write who is their role model. So people may have different role models, people may not have role models. Then this is a very interesting thing. Who's your icon? Like, people derive energy, inspiration from something. For me, it is the laughing Buddha. I really love to see the laughing Buddha. It gives me a lot of peace and energy too. Some like to visualize a banyan tree, some like to visualize the sunrise, some the sunset. So there some volcano. So it is some picture, some image which gives them a lot of energy. And this is also this game we play in the B schools. We ask them to write their story till now. How did they reach where they are till now? What were their, which school they went to? Who were their friends? What helped them in school? What were their feelings in school? What were their fears? What were their habits? What were their hobbies? Uh, uh, how was their college life? Anything which impressed them, anything they remember. So their story till now. And then to complete the story, say till the age of 80 or so. So what would they feel is in future for them? So somewhere, some subconsciously, that is called auto suggestion. You are suggesting yourself to go the path that you want to go. So somewhere you're putting your goals and making you work that way. So it is a good exercise if you write your own story till your death, like sort of. And these are some real stories that I would like to share. I know of very, very successful chartered accountants. I'm not, say Mr. A. He is today the CEO of an MNC, a global organization, a very big organization with many, many lakhs of people working for him. His is a rags to riches story. Literally, his family was so poor that the next meal on the table was doubtful, sort of. But his parents were very proud of him because there were many siblings. He was the one who was very good at studies, and they said, "We will support you till you want to study." And believe me, he chose the CA course because it was the cheapest course, not because he liked it or anything. He knew nothing about the course, but he said that after looking at the other courses, this was a cheaper option. So he started doing CA, and it was like duck taking to water. He started liking the subject so much and started passing the exam so quickly that along with CA, much against his parents' wishes, he also did costing and CS. And I think he did his law too. And then again took up a corporate job, and it was very, very essential getting money back home. But he had a long-term vision. He took a job as a trainee, management trainee, and he was paid very low. But because he said that at this age, when I have the physical capacity, I need to work hard and long. I need to get experience. I need to have exposure. So he put a stone to his heart and said, I don't care about salary. Let me first get experience. And for 3-4 years he worked very hard, and then his performance was shown, and then he got a lot of good exposure, and finally he reached the top management. So his vision was always long run, and he was very adaptable because he knew that he had to adjust. Sometimes he had good bosses, sometimes he had bad bosses, sometimes he had to work in an environment which was not even hygienic, go to places in remote areas. But he did all that to so only to be, because he knew the more and more exposure I get, and different kinds of experiences I get, I'm becoming more and more versatile. And he was focused, I want to reach the top management someday. I want to go travel business class in Mercedes and all that, and he's achieved all that. There's another person I knew that right from his CA days, he enjoyed valuations. He enjoyed calculating fundamental values. He was, in fact, my mentee. And extremely hardworking. So after he passed his final CA, he worked in one of those research organizations like CARE or CRISIL, and understood their systems, how they did fundamental analysis, how they did analysis, what were the softwares they used. And he worked very hard in log and understood their systems, did tremendous networking also over there, and then started his own valuation practice. And believe me, today he has to say no to work, the amount of work that keeps coming to him. There is another chartered accountant I know, a rank holder, who got campus placement. But he chose the placement which was not giving him great money, but it was in a bank which was in diversified services. And he was very good with people skill. So every department he used to go, he used to make friends and then convince the manager to transfer him to another department. So in a matter of 3 years or so, he had worked in the various departments, whether it is risk management, whether it is front office, back office, all the treasury operations, all the departments. And one thing he realized was what connected all the departments was technology. So he made technology only his niche area because he knew all the operations. And then he left the job and started his own technology company in association with tech experts. Then I know another chartered accountant who was in industry, very successful, picked up because he was so good by industry, and he's now country head of a very top organization. So he used to say that when you are in job, there is a lot of ethical issues. There are so many times you have to, the constraints of business are such that maybe you have to take a decision which is not ethical. But he said that I never moved away from ethics. I was very insistent. But then what I realized that I have to improve my communication skills. I have to convince my promoters that if they take this route, it makes business sense. In the long run, it will pay off. And then gradually, he became the country head in spite of not towing the line of the promoters when they wanted things to be done in a particular way, because he could communicate to them that it made business sense to go the way he wanted. There's another person I know who's at partner level at a very top accounting firm. He or she felt that uh, he or she had that habit of deep diving into issues, like people would say, tease him or her that okay, you are sort of a person, like in schools they do critical appreciation of poems, come up with things which even the poet never thought of. So you come out with issues which even nobody has thought of. But this person was discussing with me that you have to deep dive into issues, because very often you look at an issue in a very biased way, looking at things because you know those parts of that issue. So you think that issue is relating to the issues, to the parts you understand and you know. But there are things in that issue which you don't know, which you have never experienced. And also you have to deep dive. You have to go on speaking to the person who has presented the issue, because to repeat what I said, very often the person who has presented you with the issue may not have presented it in the proper manner. He or that person may be having something else in mind. So this person felt that what has made him or her reach the top, it is deep diving into issues, looking at things with a 360-degree, and not being very very quick in disposing of something very important and high paying. Looking into it, asking others to look into it, getting second opinion, getting feedback, having lot of dialogues before framing the opinion or solving the issue. And this is a secret also some of the professionals shared with me, that many of them have a tagline. Like one person says, whenever I leave my home or I enter my den, now with it is this pandemic situation, everything is being online, I say every day is an exam. I'm appearing for an exam, and that's how prepared I am, alert I am, and everything. And one person who has reached the absolute peak in the career says, I have not yet reached the peak. That is his tagline. And another person's tagline is integrate and network. He says that there are so many skill sets that I have picked up over the years that I need to be mindful to integrate all those skill sets and network. Every day I spend time in talking to people. Another person's tagline is, I'm a professional. I'm not going to steep low into, say, fee cutting or stabbing somebody's back or not speaking well. I'm a professional. Every day I'm going to dress well, speak well, and be ethical. And that has helped him. Another person's tagline is, I'm nimble and subtle to manage my bosses, because in the corporate world, sometimes your bosses, your seniors may force you to do something which you don't want to do. You have to be nimble and escape that and still rise above in the corporate ladder. And you have to be subtle and manage your bosses and convince them to be do things your way, which may be the ethical way. So basically, strategy is basically, I would say, to conclude, understanding your competencies. I spoke about various types of strategies. So but the core of all the strategies is understanding yourself. And it is very difficult to understand ourselves. There is something called the Johari window also in the cognitive strategy, where they say that there is so much of potential in you that you know but others don't know, or there may be potential in you that you don't know but others know. There may be potential in you which you don't know and others don't know also. So there is in an organization, you have to understand what is the true potential of everybody, and then as a team cohesively you have to work, and when everybody prospers, you prosper with them also. So you have to see and help everybody around you, and when they grow, you grow with them. And you have to be learn to be in higher consciousness and take the right decisions in life at the right time. And when you take these decisions, you have to be in a very balanced and pragmatic state of mind. So I think I have covered most of what I wanted to share.
Hello.
Hi, yes.
Hi, ma'am. It's done. Sorry, I went on a
No,
call.
no, not at all.
Okay. Okay. So, ma'am, we have two questions. We will take that in the chat forum. Um, so,
Okay, how? Hmm.
I will read it out for you, and then you can answer. So it's a career-oriented question which says that I will become CA next year. I am planning to do MBA after CA. Should I directly go or gain some experience before appearing for MBA?
See, I teach in a B school, and I feel that those who come with some experience are more matured. But today, that there are people who are directly doing their MBA also after this. It's see, there is no generic answer to this. It's very, very individualistic. But to get the best of the MBA course, you need some exposure. But if your articleship training, your 3 years where you've done articleship, you have got adequate exposure, and you need to be emotionally strong. Because in an MBA course, you have, say, 8 subjects every semester. And so if you have 4 semesters, you are doing what, 32 subjects, and you have to pass in all the subjects. There are projects and case laws and so many, you are very, very busy. And plus you have so many activities. You have to build your CV with extracurricular activities also. So you need a lot of high EQ for that. So, and that is why when you are of a little higher age, maybe that maturity is there. But that maturity also comes with exposure. So I feel if in your 3 years of articleship, if you have become emotionally strong, then you can directly go to. But if you are too mentally very, very sensitive, then you may take some experience and then join the course.
Okay.
And also to share with that, our ICAI has a very good PQC, post-qualification course, a diploma in management and business finance,
Right.
where the ICAI has picked up the best practices from the best B schools of India and abroad, and it is a capsule course targeted towards chartered accountants.
Right. In
And,
fact, I will highlight it to you that ICI is organizing some management courses with IIM Ahmedabad also. So it was a
Yeah, but
residential
those are
course in last
certificate.
time.
Yes, very true. Those
Yes.
are certificate courses. This is a proper diploma recognized by the government, which they will be a sort of a PQC. It is a post-qualification course, a long-term
Correct.
course.
Correct.
But
Understood.
it is an executive for means it is on weekends and all, so you can do it when you're working also. But
Yes.
there are people who, in the first batch who did it full time, doing nothing else also.
Right. No, definitely it's helpful. So
And
I
see,
can.
MBA, like, those who are analysts, I spoke to them, they said MBAs are paid more than chartered accountants in certain jobs. So you have to decide, why do you want to do your MBA also? Do you want to diversify and go into core finance in an industry, or go for equity analysis, go for PE, joint venture and all that? Then it makes sense to do an MBA. You don't do an MBA just because you think it's the right thing to do.
Correct.
See what is your ultimate career path. If you want to remain in practice, then it doesn't matter. Then why spend 2 years? Spend it in getting exposure to different kinds of experiences. But
Correct.
definitely, if you want to go to industry, and then in industry also, if you want to remain, if you want to remain in the internal audit department, there's nothing wrong. Today internal audit is changing. The complexion of it is changing. If that excites you, then you don't need not do an MBA. If you want to remain in, say, a particular department or something relating to taxation or audit or accounting, then you need not do an MBA. An MBA is a generalist. If you want to be in be in the top management, which requires tremendous leadership skills. So it is no more the soft skills. If you are interested in, then you do an MBA. If you have hard skills and you want to remain, some people, they don't enjoy being in leadership positions. They enjoy
Correct.
working behind the scenes. They enjoy the work. They have an aptitude for it. And remuneration is almost the same, whether you are the CEO or the CFO or the head of a department or this. It's not much.
Correct. Correct. So it's rather it's a choice where you want to be rather than just where people are going. So it's just not that we follow blindly what others are doing or what my peers are actually following. It's rather your aptitude for a particular thing which should decide where should you go. That's how I
Yeah,
take it.
see, each person is so individualistic. Like, we all have our own fingerprints. It's amazing how our faces are different. So many people in the world. So each one is so unique. You have to
Correct.
understand your own self, and sometimes it's very difficult to understand our own self. Like, we perceive ourselves as those perceived by, say, our parents, our siblings, our relatives, our family members, or our friends. So we think we are that kind of person. So we are blinded by others' opinions about ourselves. So it's very difficult to understand our own self. And for that, you have to enter the higher consciousness, as I was referring to, with anything that works for you, whether it is prayer, whether it is meditation, whether it is exercise, whether it is whatever, listening to music works for you. You have to enter that higher consciousness and understand yourself, and that will definitely help you to take the right decisions, because only
Correct.
you will know yourself. Nobody can guide you. See, even when I am much interested in the medical field also. So I am a trained counselor for patients, and in very terminal illnesses also, the patients always, I tell them that you know your body better than the doctor knows your body. So you know how much you can push yourself. So it is, you know yourself better than anybody else. So you
Correct.
can take feedback from others, and understand yourself, but finally you have to delve deeper and go into that higher consciousness and understand yourself and chart your own career path. But it pays to look into this, which strategy you will adopt to navigate your career path.
Correct. Any specific inputs for a practicing CA who is in midst of his career, maybe spent couple of like a decade of experience with, so how he should change his attitude, or how he should adapt to the new things which are coming? So any specific points
See,
over there?
today I feel the trend is collaboration, because it is a big that counts. A small people cannot survive, you need scalability. So you
Correct.
have a practicing chartered accountants coming together, and they may not form a partnership as such, but there can be collaborative practice. Then you develop your niche area and you let
Correct.
go areas which you don't want to focus on, and then you sort of gradually, water finds its own level. Like gradually there are people for doing a particular job, other people are doing particular job, and then you are a cohesive group and giving each other work also. So
Correct.
let me tell you that, like-minded people coming together doesn't work out. You have to have
Correct.
diverse people coming together, and that is why soft skills today is very, very important. In fact, I know some person who's very close to Jeff Bezos, and he says, you feel that he is so technically smart, yeah, but kuch nahi hai. He's not technically smart, but he knows how to get along with people, and all
Correct.
kinds of people. किधर भी नाइजीरिया में जाओ और यूक्रेन में जाओ या इंडिया में आओ, he knows how to deal with people. So
Correct.
if you want to build up your career, that people skill should be strong. So people you collaborate with, maybe not with people your type, and actually if they are not your type, only it works. That diversity gives that energy. So you have to
Correct.
collaborate with different people from different regions. If you are from Indore, maybe from Bhopal, maybe from Pune, maybe somebody speaking different languages, maybe somebody having different priorities in life. Why are you bothered how he is leading his personal life? I mean, you may be having different habits, he may be having different habits. That should not matter to you. What should matter to you? Would that collaboration work? And
Correct.
you have to look at the bigger picture. छोटे मोटे चीज
Correct.
के लिए, if you make an issue and play the victim card, he didn't share this much money with me, and he didn't give me this much practice, and then you can never have a collaborative practice. But today,
Correct.
if you have to grow, you have to network, you have to collaborate, you have to come together, you have to be bigger.
Correct, correct. I totally agree and appreciate, because this is something which one should actually look at, how we can collaborate and grow, because that's the time demand. And one
Huh.
cannot actually
But
look at
the
everything.
mistake that people do is they try to collaborate with like-minded people, which
Correct,
doesn't work.
correct,
There is no growth there, because everybody is looking at the same issue in the same way. So everybody is doing the same work. You have to
true, true,
collaborate with diverse people, with people with
correct,
diverse skill sets and backgrounds, culturally different
correct.
from you.
Perfect. So I'm a related question to this from my side, not from any participant side, but in case when you say that you have to collaborate with non-like-minded people, obviously who have different niche areas for maybe growth and all. So how do we manage conflict, or how do we avoid any such conflict which may come in terms of, so any tips may you
Yes,
give, that these are the
see,
things which one can follow?
that is your leadership. That is called leadership, no? See, why are some organizations having better profits than other organizations? Why are some organizations, though maybe they are in the same sector, they are operating in the same market? It is because their employees are productive. And why are the employees productive? Because the environment, the culture is conducive to that. Now, if you say that you cannot get along with some people you're collaborating with, it is in your hands to get along with that person. You create an ecosystem that makes that person uh, uh, understand that he cannot or she cannot keep continuing working in such a way that is harmful to a relationship to both. And even if you see in M&A activities, this is something called hubris syndrome, winner's curse, that people go through an entire activity just because they've started the activity. So sometimes maybe in your collaboration, halfway through you understand, okay, it's not going to work out. It is okay if you fail in a relation, in a partnership, and you start somewhere else. But if there has to be synergy, if there has to be, it has to be a win-win situation. This Kautilya Shastra, which was written by Kautilya or Chanakya years ago, even that time also he said that, when you capture a smaller kingdom, it should be in such a way, because that was a system then. You keep the bigger king went on capturing smaller kingdoms. It in such a way that the subjects of the smaller kingdom should feel that it was good for them. And the bigger kingdom people should not feel egoistic or this, that okay, we won or something. They should feel that they are also getting something from that smaller kingdom. They are getting some value addition from that smaller kingdom. It has to be a win-win situation always. And not only it has to be a win-win situation, it has to be perceived to be a win-win situation. That is where your communication skills comes into picture. That is why the level of soft skills you need is tremendous to be successful. So it is what distinguishes people, successful people, from not so successful people is basically soft skills. I've spoken to all these 25 CAs, extremely well spoken, extremely modest, a lot of clarity in what they were speaking. And immediately I felt the warmth with them. I felt that we were best friends. Actually, I didn't know some of them also. So it is the kind of soft skills you develop over a period. And that, how do you develop? It is constantly having dialogue. Don't be an introvert. Most chartered accountants are introverts. They're extremely conservative in their making friends. Okay, some friendships may not work out, but go out, make new friends, talk. And then you understand where you are going wrong in talking, where you are going wrong in managing relationships. And the leadership traits get honed. So for a collaborative practice to work, you need tremendous leadership skills.
Correct. So again, a related question posted by one of the participants. So question is, can you suggest some books or courses to increase the people skill? So I'll answer the first part of it. Sessions like Sangeeta ma'am sessions should be attended to actually increase your skills. And the course which ICI has conducted, WICF ICI has conducted, has actually given those kind of softer skills, at least some basics where to tread. That's something which is definitely must, and it comes at a very easy access. I mean, it's not something which is difficult to attend, but the other part of it, like any books or other courses which one can attend for people skill, would like to know from you.
I'm sure this PPT will be shared with the audience. So in that, the secondary data of mine, which 4 things I have brought out, you can look into it. Today, I think there's so much information on the net that I think 10 lives will not be sufficient to read all that. So you have to filter and find some good reading. There is something like MOOCs or something, they say, multi-open this thing, education sites, Coursera, Byju's and all, which are free of charge. You can start doing them also. But actually, if you go to see, which I spoke to these 25 successful people, it is not the webinars or the books or any role models that help you, or any mentor or mentoring you. The best things in life are self-taught. You have to deep dive, like even that article which I said was in Harvard Business Review. They said 80% of your growth is due to your experiences, is due to your exposures. So go out and work, do all kinds of work. Don't be say, अरे मैं तो chartered accountant हूँ, मैं यही काम नहीं करूँगा, इसे नहीं. Do all kinds of work, and small, big, even a difficult work. Don't say, अरे मुझे तो experience नहीं है, exposure नहीं, मैं कैसे handle करूँ. Take the work and then get the help of people who are experienced in that work. Give the work to them and assist them and understand how that work is to be done. So experience, exposure Nobody is going to handhold you. It is a myth that people are going to help you. And you know what is happening today, especially with the younger generation, they don't have traditional mentors like some senior or their boss. Their friends can become sometimes their mentors. Their somebody in the family can be their mentor. Some unknown person also can be their mentor. You know, just chatting in the lift, and also for every situation, every time in your life, every transaction, you can have a different mentor. So be open to that. Webinars, attending webinars, reading good books definitely helps. It gives you a direction, but ultimately, see, when your Google map, it's like it gives you the direction, but ultimately you have to be in a vehicle which takes you there. So you have to do your driving, or be in a vehicle, hire a vehicle or whatever. This will only give you a sort of direction or roadmap. So you have to be very, very proactive in life. What is happening with, it's perhaps a lot of people nowadays, uh, the second generation were, maybe the first generation was not very economically well off. Second generation worked very hard, and so their kids had everything with them. So there is no, so they take many things for granted, and they have a complacent attitude, expecting things to people to give them things. But fruits are not going to fall on your lap. You have to work extremely hard, and the level of hard work is difficult to describe. You need to work really hard. If people like, you know, those who are very, very successful people, you know, they have worked very hard in life.
Right, right. No, absolutely. I mean, a valuable point. Obviously, this gives you a direction, but obviously, it's how you practice and how you get an exposure will actually determine where are you going. I mean, and you may have to course correct yourself at times because you may have those kind of bitter experiences at times, but then you should not be letting yourself down just because there is a bad experience coming. So you may obviously take some learnings from it and then move ahead and again tread on the same path. So that's something which is
You have to
equally
have the maturity to filter your experiences, remove the negative parts, and you have to
correct.
have a control over your mind to not let the negative parts take away your focus. Your focus is to understand what went wrong, and to rectify that for value addition to yourself in a very pragmatic, balanced way. If you are going to, then that is your EQ. Then your EQ is very low. If your EQ is low, never you're going to be bitter or traumatized by a bad experience. Then you have a low EQ. It's very difficult to succeed. One of the sine qua non, or the essential ingredient for success, is high EQ.
Okay, right, right, right. Okay, so ma'am, just one question from my side. Decision making. So when we talk about decision making, so there may be situations where there are maybe we're not able to decide so fast. I mean, we may take long to decide, or till the time the opportunity may go. So, what is your take on how does one react and how one should avoid that kind of conflict where I'm not able to take that kind of decision? What should I do if I'm not able to
See,
decide?
for that, you should understand what is knocking at your door. Is it an opportunity, or is it a project that can wait? Because they say that opportunity knocks only once. In fact, in B schools, this is a story. They say that there was one person sitting in a room, and somebody knocks twice at the door, knock, knock, and they ask, who's knocking? They say opportunity, that person says. So the person says, no, it's not opportunity, because opportunity never knocks twice. It always
Right,
knocks only once. So
right,
you should have the prudence to distinguish that what is knocking at your door, is it opportunity or not an opportunity? If it's an
right,
opportunity, you have to immediately open the door. As I
right,
said, whether you have the skill sets or not, accept the opportunity. Then
right,
build your competency for it, or then outsource that work for whoever has the competency. But you have
right.
to also be mindful of not of seeing that your opportunities are always aligned to your competency. We don't take up jobs if you are not qualified for it.
Correct,
Take it
correct,
up, but get it done from those who are qualified for it. Qualified means, I don't say by a degree or certificate, by skill sets.
correct, correct, correct. Okay, and I think questions from my side are over. One more question from one of the participants. what is your advice or strategy to hold the CAs in the firm? So again, I believe you have covered it already, but it's just like a people skill which you need to have, or the leadership skills to retain people. But maybe an elaborate answer or any suggestions on that. How do we retain talent?
Come again. I was trying to close this PPT, so
So,
I didn't hear the question.
So the question is, what is your advice on how to hold or retain talent of CAs in the firm? Because one person may be so talented that he is getting number of opportunities from one firm, another firm, third firm. How do one retain it? What is your take?
Absolutely, that is a very burning issue today. Uh, uh, Practitioners cannot pay big amounts which big firms can pay, and you have spent time and money, because you are paying salary to a person, say but 6 months you are actually training the person, and then when the person is ready to contribute to that organization, he or she wants to jump to another organization. But as I said, today that is the situation. People are not, the loyalty factor is not there, and I don't blame them also. Life has become tough, competition is tough, standard of living is difficult, real estate prices are exorbitant. People want better remuneration. So it is the, if you can make them a partner in your organization, maybe they will not leave. So they need not only remuneration, they need status also. So that could be it. Or they can go somewhere else, and you bless them when they go somewhere else and tell them that you are always there for them, and they come back to you for some advice, and slowly you get referral practice from them. So you have to go with the flow. You cannot stop things happening. And this is the thing that is happening today, that the talent doesn't stay, and it will stay only if it is they get paid commensurate to what they are working. So you have to, they say in the value chain, be very fair. So if a person is contributing, say 20% of the revenue of your organization, his remuneration also should be commensurate with that.
Correct. Definitely, but I think a takeaway from this is also that if someone is going, and obviously we should have that kind of let go attitude also at times, because one cannot retain if someone is not willing to get retained. Okay, that also has to be. I believe there has to be some balance between both the things. I cannot actually increase any amounts of salary, even if even if he deserves or even if he wants. So that also call one needs to take. I mean, that's equally important at times, right, ma'am? Or
Absolutely, but that leaving should be not be bitter, because
correct.
you never know, no, who will come useful in life when. Be friends
Oh,
with everybody, even
obviously,
if you
man,
think that
it's
it
not
was
about
wrong of that person to leave.
correct. So it's not about straining relationships. You have to maintain those, but at the same time, you cannot be actually only just behind that person to maybe sit and be with you always, because there will be times. So I can understand that. Okay, I think, ma'am, there are no further questions. We are all done. And it was a really great session, ma'am, interacting with you. And on behalf of WIC of ICI, thank you so much for giving your valuable time. It was a great learning for all of us. I mean, it was really nice to hear you. Thank you so much, and look forward to your sessions with ICI, any other forum. So it's something great. Pleasure, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much. Good night.
Good night.